And so we're going to have these different characters we're going to study each week. And most of them are going to come from this book, and then after about 8 or 9 weeks, we're going to switch off and kind of do our own thing. But this will be pretty cool. Today we're going to study it in 1 Samuel chapter 25, if you want to start turning there. And we're going to be studying the character Nabal, or Nabal. I'm going to say Nabal. That's what I'm going with. I don't know if it's right or not. But have you guys ever heard of the competitions? And they do them every year, all across the country, different times, where people, or kids, it's usually kids, try to devise some sort of device that can protect an egg being dropped from a second story. You've heard of those competitions, and there's like no rules, and whatever you can come up with, is something unique. Well, I found this one competition, and they listed the winners from fourth graders over the last few years, and these were some of their designs. A couple of these look pretty simple, and I think the fourth graders might have handled it, but a couple of these, I think the dad or the moms got involved helping them out. But this is the first one. I thought this is what I would have come up with. It's literally just an egg wrapped in bubble wrap, stuck in a Ziploc bag. That's what I would have came with. Can you see that on the screen? Okay. As I come up.
Come over a little bit.
Over here. So it's just a Ziploc bag with bubble wrap around the egg. I guess that one did pretty well. Here's the next one. This one's a little more complex. I don't know if I would have thought of this, but it's like straws, and they've taped the straws all around this egg, I guess to keep the egg from making direct contact. And so that was pretty cool, to protect the egg from the jolt, the trauma of the fall. This one looks a lot more complex. So this one has got an egg taped in between toilet paper rolls on a sponge, and then they've attached a parachute to the little I'll call it the egg capsule. So that's a pretty complex design, but apparently this egg landed without breaking, so it worked from a 2-story fall. And now this one is simple as you look at it, but the science behind it I think is pretty complex. This is a plastic container with the egg suspended in some pantyhose. But they created like a little hammock or a little sling in there for the egg to absorb the pressure of the shock of the fall. And it's pretty complex, but the plastic sustained the hit of the ground and protected the egg. And this kind of relates to what we're talking about today. How can we as people deal with the force of foolishness when a fool does something to us that might cause us to get angry or upset? Start thinking about those people in your life that you've worked with. Maybe they're in your family. Maybe you encountered them in traffic. That's the first thing that always comes to mind with me. And but just start thinking about those fools in your life that maybe have caused you to lose your cool. And as we kind of go forward in the study. So we're going to read 1 Samuel chapter 25. I'm going to read kind of fast, so try to follow along if you can. And we're going to do 42 verses, so it's a lot, but I want to make sure we have a good basis for the story, because I think if I just said, who knows the story in Nabal, how many in here would have told you, yeah, I can tell you that story, I can recite that story. The name sounded familiar, but I had to go back and read before it came to mind again. So the setting is David is out running from Saul. Saul's trying to murder him. They've just had that encounter in the cave, remember, where David really has to jump on Saul, and he pulls a sword, but all he does is he cuts a piece of his cloak off, because David still respects the position of the king of Israel, and he doesn't kill him, but he lets Saul know, I could have killed you. So they've had that interaction. David's still on the run. He's got about 600 men with him at the time, and they've been doing different things with the communities that they come in contact with, because he's trying to build some rapport with people. He's going to eventually be king, and he does need to build that rapport with people. And also Samuel has just passed away. So David's dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of change, and there's tough stuff going on here, and then this situation happens. So read with me in chapter 25, verse 1. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home at Ramah. Then David moved down into the desert of Maon. A certain man in Maon, who had property there at Carmel, was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband, a Calebite, was surly and mean in his dealings. While David was in the desert, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, "Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Say to him, 'Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours.' Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time. When your shepherds were with us, we did not mistreat them, and the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. Ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore, be favorable toward my young men, since we come at a festive time. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them." When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name. Then they waited. Nabal answered David's servant, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my shears and give it to men coming from who knows where?" David's men turned around and went back. When they arrived, they reported every word. David said to his men, "Put on your swords." So they put on their swords, and David put on his. About 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supply. One of the servants told Nabal's wife, Abigail, "David sent messengers from the desert to give our master his greeting." But he hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields near them, nothing was missing. Night and day they were a wall around us. All the time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over and see what you can do, because this disaster is hanging over our master and his whole household. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. Abigail lost no time. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them on donkeys. Then she told her servants, "Go on ahead, I'll follow you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men descending toward her, and she met them. David had just said, "It's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the desert, so that nothing of his was missing. He has paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male who belongs to him." When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face on the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "My lord, let the blame be on me. Let your servant speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. May my lord pay no attention to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name is Fool, and folly goes with him. But as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my master sent. Now since the Lord has kept you, my master, from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, may your enemies and all who intend to harm my master be like Nabal. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my master be given to the men who follow you. Please forgive your servant's offense, for the Lord will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my master, because he fights the Lord's battles. Let no wrongdoing be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone in pursuing you to take your life, the life of my master will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has done for my master every good thing he promised concerning him and has appointed him leader over Israel, my master will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged himself. And when the Lord has brought my master success, remember your servant." David said to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hand. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought in and said, "Go home in peace. I have heard your words and granted your request." When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in the house holding a banquet like that of a king. He was in high spirits and very drunk. So she told him nothing until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise be to the Lord, who has upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt. He has kept his servant from doing wrong, and has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head." When David sent word to Abigail, asking her to become his wife, his servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, "David has sent us to you, thank you to become his wife." She bowed down with her face to the ground and said, "Here is your maidservant ready to serve you, and wash the feet of my master's servant." Abigail quickly got on a donkey and, attended by her 5 maids, went with David's messengers and became his wife.
Hey, Doug. Hey, we've had some folks join. Can you tell them what scripture that was?
Oh, that was 1 Samuel chapter 25, verses 1 through 42. Who else has joined?
Verna's on now. Robert is on. Catherine Stevenson and Robin Stevenson.
Awesome. Glad to have all y'all here this morning. Thanks for jumping on. Okay, in these studies, we're going to kind of consider these stories 3 different ways. So there's a series of questions I'm just going to throw out. This is a discussion class. Jump in. There'll be some questions that relate to the telling of the story. There'll be some questions where we can relate to the story. And then there'll be some questions that can help us figure out how do we live in this story. So, as we just look at the telling of the story, how would you describe what it means to be a fool? It's interesting that Nabal's name, Nabal actually means fool. I read some commentary that says some people think this might be a nickname because it probably would have been unlikely that their parents would name their child fool. Never know. See some pretty unusual names out there. What's it mean to be a fool? How does Nabal illustrate that he's a fool in this story?
He doesn't appreciate this thing that happened without his knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. He does not appreciate somebody. I mean, he didn't ask for that help. He didn't want it. And he's certainly not going to pay for it. Seems a bit foolish. Now, there are those who have accused David of kind of being I don't know what you call this. Is this racketeering or, no, probably not racketeering. That David, it's kind of like provide a service and then come knocking on the door for payment kind of thing. But this was kind of commonplace, especially at this time. If you had large herds, you were real susceptible to marauders and thieves and people just coming and stealing from you. So what David was doing was very helpful, and it was something to help build his reputation in the region as well. So let's contrast. What's Abigail's story? What's Abigail like? Yeah, she has a kind heart. She's really smart. I mean, it's obvious from her response in the story. She's smart. She acts really quickly, and she's kind of known for her beauty. I do question. I mean, how did she end up with this? How did she end up with this guy? Maybe she didn't have a choice. Maybe this was a planned wedding.
Arranged,
yeah. Maybe Nabal wasn't showing his true colors, as the younger man, Probably arranged though, right? I mean, this time frame, maybe she didn't have a choice here. This wasn't like 20th century Western story here. And it seems like Nabal was such a fool that his wife didn't have any kind of good influence over him. It's really kind of stinks.
kind of sounds like she wants to fascinate you.
Yeah. This wasn't the first time she had to run. And she, I mean, she doesn't say specifically, I mean, is she thinking, I don't want my husband to get killed needlessly? But maybe she's thinking about all his men, because David mentioned, you know, he's not gonna leave one man standing. That's a pretty serious sentence, is it not?
Well, they see something in her, you know, approach her with that information, you know, at that time, so those guys would go to her.
Exactly.
It's obvious that, I mean, a lot of us about kick our coverage, but it's obvious in this situation, they knew who to talk to, don't try to talk to him.
Exactly. Yeah, that servant was pretty with it. Those guys, they saw the picture, it was clear to them. You can't go to Nabal and warn him, he's not gonna make a good decision. They not only knew that you can't bring these things up to him, they knew to go to his wife, and that she'd know how to handle it. Let's look at a few things in what Scripture tells us about foolishness, what happens to fools, how you should respond to fools. Here's a few verses to think about. Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 10:23. Doing wickedness is like sport to a fool, and so is wisdom to a man of understanding. Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man is he who listens to counsel. 13:19. Desire realized is sweet to the soul, but it is an abomination to fools to turn away from it. 14:8. The wisdom of the sensible is to understand his way, but the foolishness of fools is deceit. 14:16. A wise man is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is arrogant and careless. 18:2. A fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. 14:1. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. That might be the most profound of them all. Okay, so we see the story. How has David handled this story so far? How does he handle what's happened? Has he been patient?
Not well. He's good.
He kind of goes to the nuclear option instantly, does he not? I mean, I understand he's mad. I understand, you know, he's invested a lot, assuming that maybe this was going to be a good return on investment for him, and it's not. And so he doesn't think, maybe I should send the guys back. Maybe I should go myself. Maybe I should have a chat with this guy. Maybe that would help. He goes right to, no, I'm going to kill them all, every single man. They're all going to be dead, and I'll just take what I want. So David has struggled with this. He's not had a good shock absorber. He doesn't have enough bubble wrap to protect him until Abigail is on the scene. And really it's not even Abigail as the initial, it's really the servant who takes that. That's a pretty risky move, I would think, for a servant too. If it gets back to Nabal, that one of his servants went to his wife and not to him, and then she acts, if God doesn't strike him, I have a feeling Nabal is liable to take him out, maybe take his wife out too. Because he's obviously going to not be happy with that choice. Okay, let's relate to the story now. What do you look for when you're recognizing a fool? What is it about somebody that makes you think that's a very foolish person? Or I really question this person's wisdom. What is it that catches your eye particularly? And those of you online, feel free to comment too.
Rash action.
Rash action.
Poor decisions.
Poor decision. Cutting off your nose to spite your face. Probably that's the
Choosing a pathway that you've gone down before that's failed repeatedly, yet you still continue to try to do it.
yeah, doing the same thing over and over. That sounds like Nabal too. I mean, he's been this way a long time. He's developed a reputation. Anybody thought of anybody in particular? Like no names being mentioned, obviously, and as few details as possible in case we know this person.
Judy, you can't say my name.
I think when you know the gospel and you understand it, but you still don't obey it.
Wow. That's pretty powerful, Tammy. That's
Yeah,
really powerful.
I guess I'm kind of saying that because I'm having a study with somebody and they understand it and everything, and they know it's the truth, but they're still kind of just waiting. And I'm having them understand, you might not have time to wait, so you need to act now. So,
Yeah. Who is Nabal's God? Nabal. Do you think, here's something I want to see if anybody caught it. I didn't catch it until I had read some commentary that brought attention to it. And I went back, and what does it say in verse 8? It says, David is telling his servants what to say, and this is what they told Nabal. And in verse 8, it says, ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore be favorable toward my young men, since we come at a festive time. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them. For your son David. Is this Nabal's dad? No. But at the beginning of the story, we are told that Nabal is a Calebite. Remember who Caleb is? Caleb and his buddy Joshua. These were some courageous guys. These were the only two guys that were willing to go into Canaan, right? When they were at the point where they were ready to go in and overthrow the Canaanites and take over the land that God had promised them, Caleb and Joshua were the only two that could stand up. Caleb had a pretty good reputation. In fact, the whole Calebite clan had a very good reputation, well-known family. That family established the hometown of David and somebody else we know, Bethlehem. So they're from the clan of Judah, and so they are related to David. So David has done this gesture to somebody he's related to, and he's done it really out of the kindness of his heart, and at the same time hoping that there is some sort of return on what he's offered. How many times have we encountered that? Have you ever done something for somebody, really spouses out of this, maybe somebody at work, maybe a neighbor, a friend, where you did something, maybe was even out there asking, and they didn't take it well, or they didn't thank you, or they treated it poorly or disrespectfully? And if so, how did you react? How did you feel? I know I have done some things for others, and then I've examined myself later, realizing I think I did it for them. Maybe it was 50-50, maybe it was 60-40. Maybe I was doing it for myself too. Because maybe my neighbor wouldn't do what he was supposed to do. And so maybe I helped them. But maybe I was helping myself too. So maybe I didn't have a good attitude. And so maybe I kind of resented that they didn't respond, or that they didn't respond favorably. I really thought we'd have a good, juicy story this morning. Somebody would throw something out there.
But at first, when you consider somebody's family or closest family, and then they just, whether it push you away or view your motives as impure, that hurts.
Yeah, it sure does, because there's a connection there. There's already some investment. I mean, we know Nabal knows who David is. He talks about him being the son of Jesse. He knows, and it's funny because he's saying, who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Well, he obviously knows. He just resents the fact that David is expecting, maybe some sort of return on what he's done for him. And even if you don't look at this from a perspective of family or of friendship or anything else, I mean, you'd think Nabal would realize this could be beneficial for my business or what I do. And if these guys are around to help me more, this might be worth it for me to just give up a little bit of food, a few gifts to compensate these guys. But he doesn't even see the value in that. Nope. It seems like he's one of those guys, I want to do it my way or the highway. I don't want anybody else's help. I'll tell you if I need your help, and I'll tell you how to do it. What it seems like to me.
Well, and when Abigail comes back, he's throwing a banquet as if he is a king.
Yeah.
He doesn't want David to come up and be the king. He would like, he likes to fall on his face and he'll step in and be the king.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't even make that correlation. That's great. Here's David, which everybody knows. Abigail knows he's intended to be the king. They know, but he's throwing himself a party fit for a king. Yeah.
So where does Abigail chooses to describe how this is your enemy? Because of the lives of your enemies, you will bring out the whole of he knew who David was and what he had done and how to strike at his heart in a good way to say, I know who you are, you're the one who broke the land.
That's why I like teaching, because I missed that. I missed that completely. She chose her words carefully, did she not? She used that analogy of the sling. She knows who David is. He killed Goliath. He's famous for it.
It did say she was very wise or intelligent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Big boost for all the ladies in class today. This is one woman really looking out for two different guys. Of course, one of them is just due in the end anyway.
He also says what's interesting to me in verse 11. He's like, why should I take my bread and water and the meat that I have slaughtered for my shears and give it to men coming from who knows where?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, wow, everything is his.
My. I worked for it. I got it. I've slaved all my stuff. Yeah. So what about, have you ever known an Abigail? We talked about a fool on Nabal. What about an Abigail? Have you ever known an Abigail? Probably a lot of people in here could talk about their moms being an Abigail, right? I don't know how many times our kids' lives were saved by their mom jumping in just in the nick of time to help somebody see. Maybe he needs to walk around the block for a minute, calm down. Because I thought, when I was reading this, I thought, of course David's doing this. I didn't see that there was a big issue there. Okay, so we've known some fools, we've known some Abigails, those people who become the shock absorbers in our lives to help us not blow up, to break up, to completely disintegrate as a result of some foolish thing that's happened or some terrible thing. And whether it's justified or not, how we respond, how we choose to respond, what attitude we choose is going to dictate how we handle those situations. Having that Abigail in our lives plays a big part and something that we need to be on the lookout for and be thankful for. So now, we've heard the telling of the story. We can kind of relate to some examples in our lives. How do we live? How do we live in such a way that we're not susceptible to fools? Whether it's the effect of fools or whether it's acting the fool. How do we react when we don't get what is rightfully ours. Just like you brought up with the example of these are my shears and my sheep, that's my food. And he wants mine. I'm justified in keeping mine. I didn't ask you to do this, so maybe technically he is justified.
You have a lot more laws with plenty than you're doing.
Yep. Again, choosing our attitudes.
Well, of course, Rick's favorite picture is even a fool is not wise if he just keeps his mouth shut.
I might need to learn something from that one, Rick.
Yeah.
So the comment I have, I don't have anymore.
And I'm witness of Rick living that. I know that that's a theme in Rick's life because I've been in meetings with Rick. And I know that Rick is quiet most of the time until he has something to say, something important to bring up.
I can attest to that too.
I think when you go through tough times, like, you know, I lost my mom and stuff like that, and I think I saw some Abigail and, you know, in my own family members, and it's very important.
Yeah. Maybe one of the things we ought to think about is not so much how can I handle dealing with fools or how can I avoid being a fool. Maybe we need to be a little more aggressive, a little more assertive and say, how can I be an Abigail? How can I be that person for somebody else? Maybe instead of not worrying so much about how life's affecting me and that, but maybe how can I help someone else? I think first you have to be alert. Your eyes have to be open. You have to be invested and involved. Because if you're coming at it from the outside and you really don't know what's going on and you don't have relationships built, it's going to be difficult to really provide meaningful input. So we have to be involved in each other's lives. We got to be a part of each other. We got to know what's going on. And then we have to have that attitude of, I need to be attentive to what somebody else might need. What can I do? How can I step in? Well, I really struggle with that. I am one for something happens, and then the next day I think, wow, I could have done, I should have done, I wish I would have, and I don't see it at the time, and I think, well, you know, I had other things going on that were distracting me or whatever, and that's probably true.
And it's mostly about hospitality. They have a means to do it, obviously. It's 200 loaves of bread. You just grab and go. They have the means to do it. So I'm not tonight to decide what would make you not time for them. And
Yeah.
it makes me think of when Jesus told the apostles, go to this house and tell the message and talk about that house. And that was their kind of hospitality, and obviously the person said, okay, and let them know.
I saw a post and I shared it on Facebook because it just caught my eye. But it was a picture of an axe, only the axe handle was made out of steel, and the axe head was made out of wood. and the post was something to the effect of, it's one thing to be unique, but it's another to be useful, right? And to be unique is really kind of it can really be a very self-focused mentality and attitude. But you can be unique and be useful. And I think that's what Abigail was. She was useful. She had influence, she had means, she had opportunity, and she had the desire to step forward. And she used all of those gifts to help. And she didn't help her husband so much. She helped save a lot of people, a lot of servants, a lot of workers didn't lose their lives because of this. And David didn't have to spend the rest of his life thinking, man, I may have jumped the gun. I killed a lot of people. I ruined a lot of families just because I was angry And in the end, God handled it anyway, right? I mean, Nabal, he become like a stone. And then God took his life 10 days later. So we have the patience to wait for God to get his vengeance when we feel like we've been wrong. Probably another good, a good thing that we could learn from. All right. Let's try to be Abigail's this week, okay? Let's think about that as we go out this week. How can this lesson, how can this focus mature us this week as we go out? Thank you all so much for your comments, especially those online. Really appreciate it. I know it's not easy. Thank you all for being here. Look forward to coming back next week.